Good evening. This is Cold News, and today we are going to reveal how Russia is using a secret fleet of more than 1,300 ships to map and sabotage the underwater infrastructure that carries 97% of global internet traffic and $10 trillion in daily financial transactions. December 25, 2024. Gulf of Finland. The tanker Eagle S, registered in the Cook Islands, drags its anchor for 100 kilometers along the seabed. The result: 4 underwater data cables cut. The Estlink, 2 power cable between Finland and Estonia, one of only 2 connectors between the countries, was destroyed. Finnish special forces boarded the ship. What they found confirmed Western intelligence's worst fears: this was no accident. It was deliberate sabotage using ships from the Russian Ghost Fleet. Over the next 10 minutes, you will discover exactly how Russia transformed 50-year-old rusty tankers into weapons of hybrid warfare, how many cables have already been cut, and why Swedish intelligence revealed that Russia has spent a decade mapping every critical cable in the Baltic and North Seas. Let's start with what this ghost fleet actually is. The official definition from the International Maritime Organization in December 2023 describes the Ghost Fleet or Shadow Fleet as ships engaged in illegal operations for the purpose of circumventing sanctions, avoiding compliance with safety or environmental regulations, avoiding insurance costs, or engaging in other illegal activities. The numbers for the Russian fleet are brutal. In 2022, there were just over 600 ships. In December 2023, between 1,100 and 1,400. And by 2025, more than 1,300 ships were confirmed, tripling since the start of the war. 80% of Russia's maritime oil exports are carried by this fleet. And here is the disturbing part: 2/3 of the ships carrying Russian oil have unknown insurers. Translation: they have no real insurance, they violate minimum safety standards, and they are floating environmental time bombs. In December 2024, 2 50-year-old tankers, the Volga 212 and the Volga 239, broke in half during a storm in the Kerch Strait, spilling 5,000 tons of oil. A senior Russian scientist called it the worst environmental catastrophe of the 21st century for Russia. But oil spills are just a side effect. The true function of this fleet is hybrid warfare. A report from Swedish intelligence revealed that Russia has conducted large-scale activities for a decade mapping critical infrastructure in the North Sea and the Baltic Sea. And not just random mapping, but specifically mapping underwater communication cables, power cables, gas pipelines, critical shipping routes, and choke points. Why the Baltic Sea? Because it is shallow, with an average depth of only 55 meters. Compared to the deep ocean of over 4,000 meters, cables in the Baltic are extremely accessible for sabotage. And there is another factor: massive traffic. 4,000 ships pass through the Baltic daily, which is perfect for hiding malicious activities among legitimate commercial traffic. Now let's look at the documented attacks. In October 2023, the ship Nu Polar Bear, flying the Hong Kong flag, damaged 2 underwater cables and a gas pipeline connecting Finland and Estonia. The ship ignored orders to stop and continued sailing. In November 2024, the ship Yipeng 3, registered in China but coming from a Russian port, cut 2 cables in the Baltic connecting Sweden, Lithuania, Finland, and Germany. The Danish Navy intercepted the ship. In December 2024, the Eagle S, with a Russian crew, cut 4 data cables and the Estlink, 2 power cable on Christmas Day. Finnish police discovered an anchor drag mark nearly 100 kilometers long. In January 2025, the cable between Latvia and Sweden was vandalized by a Bulgarian ship under suspicion of deliberate dragging. By 2025, there were 11 confirmed incidents in the Baltic Sea following the same pattern. The anchor accidentally drops, drags for kilometers, and the cable is cut. Recent discoveries are even more concerning. In May 2025, the tanker Sun was detected sailing in circles around a 600-megawatt power line between Sweden and Poland without carrying any cargo. In the same month, the tanker Jaguar was escorted out of Estonian waters for posing a threat to infrastructure. Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk reported similar suspicious maneuvers. The pattern is clear: Russia is testing NATO defenses, mapping vulnerabilities, and cutting cables to measure response time and the political will to react. Why do underwater cables matter so much? 97 to 98% of global internet traffic travels through them, along with $10 trillion in daily financial transactions, government communications, and military operations. Europe has the highest concentration of these connections. Cutting these cables doesn't just disconnect the internet, it disrupts financial markets, power grids, military communications, and emergency services. Defense experts state that attacks on underwater cables are an activity conducted below the level of war, designed to send the signal that Russia can isolate nations from the outside world. The real problem is that repair takes time. A typical cable is no thicker than a garden hose, and repairing it requires scarce specialized ships, good weather conditions, and weeks of work costing millions of dollars. If multiple cables were cut simultaneously, the impact would be severe. In response, on January 14, 2025, NATO launched the Baltic Sentry mission to protect infrastructure with patrols, air support, and continuous surveillance. Secretary-General Mark Rutte warned that threats would have consequences such as seizure and arrest. Although incidents have temporarily stopped, stability is volatile because Russia demonstrates adaptability and NATO cannot patrol every kilometer 24 hours a day. The UK launched the Nordic Warden operation using artificial intelligence to track the Ghost Fleet in real time. But the fundamental problem is proof of intent. How to prove the dragging was deliberate and not an accident, especially with ships registered in tax havens and hidden ownership? It is plausible deniability. When Estonia tried to detain the tanker Jaguar in May 2025, Russia sent a Su-35 fighter, signaling there would be military consequences. NATO is stuck between the lack of definitive proof and the risk of military escalation. Meanwhile, Russia continues mapping and testing. In summary, Russia built a fleet of 1,300 ships to evade sanctions, map NATO infrastructure, and carry out sabotages with plausible deniability. There are 11 confirmed incidents, putting global internet and trillions of dollars at risk. Experts warn that if Russia attacks cables and satellites simultaneously, NATO's digital security will be compromised. The radical solution being tested by Nordic countries is the implementation of offline payment systems in case of a mass cut. Hybrid warfare is already happening silently at the bottom of the sea through ships that shouldn't exist. This is cold news. If you want to continue discovering real threats to critical infrastructure, like this video and subscribe to the channel. Understanding invisible hybrid warfare isn't paranoia, it's preparation for reality. Until next time.